You're a fan of classical music too? That's awesome. I really like the Romantic period. You just can't beat Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff symphonies. What's your favorite period? Baroque? I'm not really a big fan of Baroque. What pieces do you like? Ebenholz is a Mystic Music Man caster. If you don't know your Mystic casters, the branch has Iris and Indigo. They have an extremely slow attack interval, but have extremely high attack to make up for it. I say make up for it in very big quotes because their DPS overall is kinda bad. Their trait lets them store attack charges which they can unleash on the next enemy they hit, doing a very big red number. Ebenholz's first talent, Dynamics, lets his stored attack charges deal 135% damage, and he can store an extra charge exclusively for elite or boss enemies. If you're wondering what are considered elite enemies, it's any enemy in the archive with the quirky triangle sign. So the Ice Slugs from Chapter 6 are a no, but the Yeti Cleavers are. Ebenholz's second talent, Pozyomka, lets him deal more attack if there aren't any other enemies nearby his target. Just by looking at his talents, Ebenholz seems like he's a boss killer. His second skill expends all his stored charges to create summons in his range that last 30 seconds. When enemies approach the summon, they'll explode, dealing big arts damage and pulling the enemies in the direction of the summon with medium force. This skill seems like it'd be cool since you can flood his range with 3 to 5 summons at a time, which can deal big damage, but then you look at that fine detail that says it's based on his stored charge count, meaning if he's constantly attacking enemies with his basic attacks, he'll only spawn one summon at a time. Just because he spawns one summon at a time doesn't mean it's bad though, you know, WS2 gets one mine at a time, so what makes this skill terrible? 13 SP cost. Your best way to use this skill is to not have Ebenholz attack enemies so he can save charges to spawn a horde of summons, but this requires pretty specific enemy wave patterns that you have to notice while also putting him in an area with just the right amount of enemies coming in, and at that point it's not really worth it. Clearly, his S3 is better because it limits his targeting to only elite and boss enemies, increasing his attack and attack speed and increasing his first talent effect to 1.4 times. Now Ebenholz won't waste charges on the small enemies. How awesome. He has very high damage per hit, and that extra attack speed gets his stored charges faster so he can benefit from his first talent more. Ebenholz scales really well with buffers and debuffers because of his first and second talents, which are automatically multiplicative, and you've probably seen compilations of him farting on bosses, but this skill's major weakness is not getting stored charges. This means that once Ebenholz splurges all over the enemy, his single attacks are just kinda mid. He does have some interesting synergy with the skill and sleep skills such as Kafka and Sora. Since Ebenholz can't attack slumbered enemies, he can unleash his pent-up energy. Okay, I'll stop with the innuendos. Since Ebenholz can't attack slumbered enemies, he'll store up more charges, which will benefit from his first talent, which results in big damage. Ebenholz's release came with his first module, which increases the amount of charges he can store by 1 and buffs his first talent's damage. The stats buff his attack and attack speed. This module pairs well with his third skill since he gets more damage amplification from stored charges for an even bigger red number. His second module, which just came out a while ago, gives him more attack speed when he's holding a charge. The talent upgrades buff his second talent a bit and lets him deal AoE damage if there are enemies around the enemy he is targeting. The stats buff his HP and attack. You might think that this module pairs well with his second skill, but counterintuitively, it doesn't because of min-maxing. If he runs out of charges on his second skill, he'll always be screwed, but if he can set up summons in his range, then he'll always have enough. There's never a point where halfway through the skill windup he has enough time to get all his charges back and start snowballing from there. Overall, Ebenholz definitely takes some time getting used to. He might be a little underwhelming when you first use him, but once you learn proper placement and positioning, he can be really fun to use. Personally, if Spec Alter doesn't take 300 pulls, like a certain other Abyssal Limited, I might pull for him just because he has funny music references. His art's also very awesome. Alright, so apparently you caused a giant disaster at Rhine Labs. Can you explain what happened? An invention of mass destruction? What was it? Oh no. Dorothy is a Trapmaster rat specialist with operators like Robin and Frost in her branch. These operators have skills that let them deploy traps in battle, which you can place on open melee tiles that don't have enemies standing on them. Her first talent gives her 2 traps immediately on deployment and lets her hold up to 10 of them. It's a pretty standard trap master talent, nothing too special. Now, her second talent is a bit crazy. For every trap of hers triggered, Dorothy will get a 2% attack buff, stacking up to 10 layers for a total of 20% attack. Because of how much you're going to be spamming traps all over the map, it's really easy to get this talent to max. Even better is that all her skills are multiplicative, so it pairs well with this talent. Dorothy's second skill makes her traps deal big physical damage and bind the enemies around the trap for 3.5 seconds. If there's only one enemy, the bind duration is changed to 6 seconds. For a single target bind, 6 seconds is pretty insane, especially when you can spam Dorothy's traps all over the map. Even if you have multiple targets in the trap's range, it'll still have that 3.5 second bind, which is really good, along with the big damage. This skill is a strong mix of crowd control and damage. Dorothy's third skill turns her into Bomber Woman, making her traps deal big arts damage and slow in a cross. If there are other traps in the explosion cross range, they'll explode after a 2-second delay. You can easily imagine how Dorothy can set up a map-wide cascade that can clear super easy, but that's the thing about her. She plays similar to a summoner, being able to low op a lot of stages, and just like summoners, her skill ceiling can go pretty high. Dorothy doesn't have the downside of deployment limit like summoners, so if you're trying to do challenging content with her, the real issue comes with having to manage her trap count correctly. Alright Gavial, you went from becoming a medic to a guard. What do you mean you're still a medic? You're not healing allies. Okay, the enemies are dead and that means allies take less damage, but that has nothing to do with healing. No, that doesn't make any sense, you're not a medic! Gavial the Invincible, aka gavialter, is a 6-star of the Centurion Guard branch, which are basically your AoE guards like Blaze and Guard Spectre. Assuming Yostar scheduling follows the same as last year, she'll probably come in as the limited operator for Global's 3rd anniversary. Anyways, her first talent just gives her more attack and defense straight up, and then it gives her even more attack and defense for every enemy she's blocking. Since Centurion Guards get 3 block at Elite 2, the talent gives her an extra 22% more attack and defense, which is really strong already. Her second talent increases healing effectiveness by 20% if she's above half her HP, and increases it to 40% if she's below half her HP. Note that healing effectiveness only affects green numbers, which are healing attacks, so basically stuff like medics and healing defenders. Gavialter won't benefit from passive healing such as Skalter, Sora, or Angelina's talent. Her second skill increases her attack by almost double her base amount, widens her attack range, and increases her defense, pulling enemies toward her with medium force. With this skill, she gets above 2000 attack, which is enough to go past basically every enemy's defense except like Patriot. Since it pulls enemies into her for her to block, Gavial will also benefit from her first talent being active, which can make her deal even bigger number, granted she doesn't just straight up shred the enemies first. Gavialter's third skill, Jungle Spirit, increases her attack massively, again, and it also gives her 100 more attack speed, meaning she'll have half of her base attack time. The skill also increases her block count by 2, and during the skill duration she'll only receive 50% damage. After the skill duration, the other 50% of the damage she received will be turned into a flat damage over time for 20 seconds after the skill duration. It's really easy to see how this skill can go crazy for general mobbing. Being a Centurion Guard, she'll attack enemies equal to block count, which is 5, and this can also benefit her first talent. Her attack soars past enemy defense, again, and she has half her base attack time, so she'll be slamming that chainsaw very quickly to mow down everyone in her range. Gavial even takes reduced damage during the skill duration, which can help her tank damage, especially when you're grouping hordes of elite enemies together. It's an extremely solid skill, and the numbers make it pretty obvious where to use it. Before you all go and start claiming that Blaze is dead though, let me just make it clear here. Gavialter is made for reversed, Blaze is made for consistency. Gavial relies heavily on her skills if there are bigger threats coming to her, while Blaze can just AFK most enemies away. There are probably situations where you can interchange them, but for the most part, it's not like one is a direct upgrade to the other. Other than that, Gavial the Invincible is definitely a strong guard to pull for because of her powerful wave clear. Pozyomka. You like reading books? Interesting. From what I've heard, you're very caring towards the Durans. Wait, why are they passing out in the first place? Ah, alcoholism. Yeah, that makes sense. Pozyomka is a heavy shooter sniper that I'm definitely not pronouncing correctly, and there's gonna be a bajillion comments trying to correct my pronunciation, all saying different things, but I'm sorry to say that I don't care. Her first talent gives her a typewriter that can only be placed on range tiles, lasting for 25 seconds. This typewriter is similar to a phantom clone with the same skills as Pozyomka and a separate redeployment timer, and that's why it's extremely significant. She essentially has pseudo-global range with a clone of herself that can use skills too, which is insane. You can alternatively just slap the typewriter to target the same enemy as her, basically doubling her damage. The typewriter is immune to buffs, which is sad for Pozyomka, but it's also immune to debuffs, so stuff like Emperor's Blade, attack speed, fart cloud won't affect it. It doesn't even count as an operator, so in this clip, Emperor Blade targets theyre with his black smoke instead of the typewriter. There's lots of use cases for the typewriter, and this talent is what makes Pozyomka so strong. Her second talent makes the typewriter reduce the defense of enemies by a certain amount for 4 seconds. If the typewriter is in the 4 adjacent tiles next to Pozyomka, it'll reduce defense even further. Reducing defense is always good for physical damage, so this talent is nice. Her second skill reduces the redeployment of the typewriter by half and makes her shoot 3 times for 230% physical damage. This skill can hold 2 charges. It's obviously good for spamming the typewriter around the map and using those 2 charges to take out specific threats that Pozyomka wouldn't have the range to snipe. It's a nice skill, but pales in comparison to her third. Pozyomka's third skill adds a single tile forward to her attack range, reduces her attack interval, and makes her attacks deal twice the damage. If the enemy is in the tile directly ahead, they'll take even more damage. Despite the short summary of this skill, it will absolutely shred anything in her range, especially if you have the typewriter targeting the same enemy as her. This skill is even more menacing when you realize that it expands the versatility of that typewriter, letting you delete enemies from across the map without even a sweat. It's a very basic but strong skill that just deals a bunch of damage. Pozyomka's module gives her a slight boost in damage to targets ahead in her range and lets her ignore physical dodge. The talent upgrades just add extra attack to the typewriter. The extra stats from this module give her more HP and attack, and this module is obviously supposed to pair with her third skill, getting even more damage in on enemies straight ahead of her. Comparing Pozyomka's third skill to Schwartz's third skill, Pink Woman wins in skill, DPS, and total damage, assuming her and the typewriter target the same enemy. So, what's the catch? It's actually defense. Even with Sculptor, Pink Woman can't make a dent in Bird Mephisto's dormant phase, while Catwoman with the same buff can easily cut through it. While Pause easily has a versatility advantage with her typewriter, Schwartz wins when the numbers don't work out in Pozyomka's favor, and this isn't exclusive to enemy defense. CC tags like attack down -50% can raise Schwartz's viability over Pause. In the end, both are cracked snipers that can shred elite enemies, so I'm not saying one is bad and the other is better.